Deep Throat gives Mulder a heads up when a mysterious man with alien DNA goes on the run. What the agents uncover is not only groundbreaking, but might just make Scully a believer. Join us in this epic conclusion to Season 1.
This is not happening.
Hello and welcome to This Is Not Happening, another X-Files podcast.
You're late.
Do you have it?
Yes.
Good. They're willing to make the exchange.
You spoke to them?
Yes. I'll take the parcel.
No, sir. I made the exchange.
I made the deal, Scully. They're expecting me.
I don't trust you.
You've got no one else to trust.
I don't know who you are. I know nothing about you.
Oh, for God's sake, don't screw this up. Let me tell you something you should know. In 1987, a group of children from a southern state were given what their parents thought was a routine inoculation. What they were injected with was a cloned DNA from the contents of that package you're holding as a test. That's the kind of people you're dealing with.
So why give it back to them?
To save Mulder's life.
At the risk of so many other lives?
It's the tip of the iceberg. You and Mulder are the only ones who can bring it to light. Now give me the parcel.
And we're back with This Is Not Happening, another X-Files podcast. Welcome to our little show. I am Andrew, joined tonight by Mike. Say hello to the nice people.
It is here.
It is here.
The season finale.
We have worked our little buttocks off. We have endured some of the good ones and suffered through some of the bad ones, but we are finally here. I would argue that this is one of the best episodes of the series. I'm going to stake my claim right here.
I don't think anyone would disagree with you. Yeah, as far as mythology goes, it's fantastic.
Well, I think this is the beginning, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, they've toyed with a couple of things, but this is the beginning of mythology proper. They put their flagpoles in the ground here and say this is where the story is pretty much going to go. And I think it's, anyway. I will stop blowing this episode and start getting into it, perhaps. This is the 24th episode of the first season, written by Chris Carter and directed by R.W. Goodwin. And this pattern of Carter writing and R.W. Goodwin is going to be repeated for every season until season 6. This is going to be the way to end.
He's their closer. R.W. comes in for those important season finales.
Arguably nails it. I mean, and for the most part, they're all really good.
Oh, yeah.
So, we open with a pulse-pounding car chase during the day on the streets of an unnamed city. We don't get a legend for this, but later on we're going to learn it's Maryland. Mark Snow's drum are with us as a police Crown Victoria chases after another boring K car, driven by an unassuming sweater-wearing man. Why is he being chased? What crime has he committed? There's no time to get into it, as the cars swerve to avoid trucks and smash through crates until the fleeing man is cornered at a fence. He gets out and tries to climb it to escape, but the cops catch up to him and go at him with truncheons. Despite looking like he's 120 pounds soaking wet, he disarms one of the cops and clubs him back, getting the upper hand. By the time a second police cruiser has arrived, another cop getting into the fray is getting clubbed for his troubles. His partner pulls out a taser and shoots the sweater man with it. The taser seemingly has no effect.
Hello?
Sweater man turns and runs up a ramp as more police cars arrive. Taser cop pulls his gun and shoots Sweater man twice as Sweater man jumps off the ramp.
They're shutting us
into the
down,
water.
Scully.
Splash! The shooter cop
They
tells
called me
another
in
cop
tonight.
that he knows he got him twice, and
And they said they're
to
going
the
to
ominous
reassign us to
strains
other
of Mark
sections.
Snow's music, we come over to the
told you
camera,
that?
panning over a
Skinner.
splatter of green blood. Roll credits.
He said word came down
That
from the
was
top.
excellent.
Mulder.
Yeah, it's like
It's
you're
over,
watching
Scully.
it.
I am very
Well, you have to
disappointed,
lodge a
however.
protest. They can't.
You didn't
Yes,
even
they
mention the epic jump on that car.
What are you going to do?
It's so fucking ridiculous,
Yeah.
but it's amazing.
It's
Not
This is
thinking
how
about it.
you do action
can't.
in the 90s.
yeah, it is very much like let the stuntman figure it out, right?
Not
like-
as long as the truth is out.
I think R.W.
I'm
Goodwin
gonna
had
put
a
a
lot
ramp.
on his plate, and he just allowed his staff to, like a second unit, to do this pulse pounding chase, and it's good. Like, it really sets
it's
the
good
tone.
stuff. You could walk a busload of school children under that car when it's at its peak,
Yeah.
and they would be perfectly fine. It's
There are a lot of call-outs to Vancouver in this particular episode, because at first we see a CN train. Like, that is in the very first shot. It's Canadian National. It's our big train company up here. But they go to such great lengths to show us that it's not Canada. You know? Like the cop cars have Artis or Arliss, I forget the name of the actual place, but it's Arliss PD. And I was like, that's weird. Is that like some sort of stock police car? So I actually Googled Arliss PD, and you can, the only thing that comes up are die-cast cars from the X-Files.
Really?
You can buy this particular cop car.
Awesome.
And it's super rare. There's like 5 Google results, period. But that's all. It's a good opening scene. I liked it. And then we have our usual credits. In this one, we get, instead of the usual catchphrase of trust, the truth is out there, we get trust no one.
Ladies and gentlemen.
And then we'll set the tone. So we cut to after the credit sequence, Sunday, May 8th, 1994. We open on a television that is showing us a movie, Journey to the Center of the Earth. The camera pans over Mulder, asleep on the couch, as the phone rings. It's Deep Throat, who tells Mulder to turn on Channel 8. A news broadcast brings us and Mulder up to speed on the car chase. Mulder records the broadcast, seeing a familiar face in the crowd. There's a neat cut which brings us to the next scene. The tape is reversed to show us the crowd again, but instead of being in Mulder's apartment, we're at his office, with Mulder showing the tape to Scully. Mulder prints out a still of the crew cut man. This is classic 90s technology where you can print stuff out from the VCR. We finally learn why the suspect was being chased. He wouldn't pull over for a moving violation, which is a real indictment of policing in the 90s. Like, the cops immediately go to gunfire to stop him from fleeing. That just seems to me like, no, that is so wrong.
You can't let this one go.
Even Scully quips, well, that ought to put him on the 10 most wanted list. Scully reminds Mulder that Deep Throat might not be as trustworthy as Mulder believes, but that doesn't stop Mulder from persisting. How are we feeling about this opener so far?
They're front-loading the episode, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're coming in strong. This is the final episode of the season, and they want to make sure they have a engaging story for anyone who's tuning in right now.
Yes.
And I think they're pulling it off so far, first few minutes.
Well, and they're also laying some groundwork for the wedge that's going to be driven between Mulder and Scully. Like, she is on the fence about Deep Throat, to be sure, at this point, but she's still going along for the ride.
Yeah.
And she's right. Like, Deep Throat has deliberately misled them in the past. So I think she's right to be cautious about his motives.
And we would expect nothing less from her. Her being Scully and her unsuredness about the X-Files.
Yeah, exactly. We have another great cut. This time it's the photo of the crew cut man, which brings us to Mulder and Scully at the crime scene. This time interviewing Chief Lasario. Lasario doesn't know who crew cut man is, as the scene became very chaotic with 3 different law enforcement agencies present. Scuba divers are searching the water for Sweater Man, but it's been 18 hours. Lasario asks what the FBI's interest is, and Mulder lies badly that the suspect matches the description of a federal fugitive. And I love how Lasario calls him on it, saying, that's interesting. No description was released.
This is James Laird, who also appears in Colony.
Oh. So they're going to go look at the suspect's car, which has been impounded. And looking over the car, Scully reveals that this car has been registered to a rental agency in Gaithersburg, and they've got no idea that the car even went missing. She thinks they're wasting their time, and they're at a loss until Mulder notes that the car they're looking at isn't the same car in the photos. This car has a crack in the windshield, and Sweaterman's car doesn't. There's also a sticker on the windshield, which in our next scene, Scully is looking at through a magnifying glass. It is the caduceus, the adopted symbol of the medical profession. They reason that a doctor would have that on his car, so Mulder calls up Danny, who has quite the role in this episode.
They utilize Danny.
They do. They're going to have him run the plate for a car owned by a doctor. And I got to ask, how, I don't think, maybe it's different down where you are, but I don't have to register my occupation when I get my driver's license or car registration. So
I don't, it's not on my ID.
How's that
or
gonna
anything,
work?
So I don't know if certain professions do or if it's just a convenient plot device.
I think it's a good, convenient plot device. But either way, maybe
Because they're the FBI, they have access to who these people are and what they do. And I don't know if we're just expected to believe
I
that.
bet you there's a computer scene that got cut where there's, a match is flashing.
Doctor, janitor,
two faces line up.
fast food worker, doctor.
Well, they also figure out there's a conspiracy in the offing here, as these cars have deliberately been switched. So, yeah, we're getting somewhere. Even Scully is a little bit on board now. So we're going to cut now to the Amgen Corporation in Gaithersburg, Maryland. We see a scientist working with chemicals when Mulder and Scully walk into his laboratory. Behind him are several cages containing monkeys, which we hear make monkey-like squeals as the agents enter.
Dr. Berube?
Yes?
With the FBI. Can we have a minute of your time?
I'm actually very busy.
I'm sorry. Are you aware that a car registered to you was involved in a high-speed chase in Artis yesterday?
Excuse me?
A Silver Sierra, Doctor. Do you own a Silver Sierra?
Yes. It was used for what?
A crime. Were you aware that it was even missing?
Not until you mentioned it. I have a housekeeper, and she often uses the car. It's the second car. Please! They should not be excited. Nothing should be touched.
I'm sorry, I thought they were friendly.
They're part of an experiment.
What kind of experiment?
Recognize Ken Kramer as Dr. Berube.
I knew I've seen that face before.
He is the scientist in The War of the Copperphages, Alexander Ivanov. He's the guy in the wheelchair.
Yes.
He also appears in 3, I know everyone's favorite episode.
Actually dig that episode. Thank you very much.
Well, if you dislike the end, I would expect you to like 3.
Well, for me, with him, it's his voice.
He's got a good voice.
It's his voice that you really recognize, I think, between those characters. But, well, as we're having this discussion about housekeepers, Scully reaches out for one of the monkeys, but it reacts angrily and causes her to flinch back. And this pisses off Dr. Berube, who's like, have I answered all your questions? And she has, so they leave. And Mulder and Scully are out in the hallway now. They're figuring out what they're going to do next. And Mulder says he wants to question the housekeeper about the car, but Scully draws a line in the sand saying, no, we're done.
Yeah. She calls him. No way.
This is beyond absurdity. And yeah, well, what are we doing here, right? This is Deep Throat rationing out these facts because he knows it will only encourage you. Although I like the way she puts it better.
Yeah, she lays it out for him. She says, look, we are way out on a limb here. We're investigating this beyond the evidence we have to support it. So I think Deep Throat is jerking you off right now because he's done it in the past.
Yep. I'd like the catch lines there too. You think he does it because he thinks you get off on it rather than that he gets off on watching you walk around.
Mm-hmm.
I also appreciate the heavy use of half shots, basically to avoid showing us that Gillian Anderson is very pregnant at this point.
Yeah.
And there's some creative costuming going on here. Like she's wearing a lot of big overcoats and such. We've definitely got Gillian Anderson. We got Scully having doubts about what they're going to do here. She goes off into the bathroom to sort of leave him to think about it. And yeah. So later that night, we cut to Mulder's apartment. Deep Throat meets him on the street. He challenges him that he's not working harder on this case, that he's giving up. And they've got a back and forth with Mulder finally revealing his frustration with Deep Throat. And Deep Throat doesn't really give him anything there other than you've got to continue. You know, you've never been closer, even though he doesn't really tell him what he's close to.
Mm-hmm.
Chair recognizes Mike.
I just want to say there is a consistency that I really appreciate between episodes here, where when Scully gets kind of firm with Mulder and she calls into question his willingness to believe anything, or anything Deep Throat says at least. He takes it to heart. You know, we saw this before in EBE, about the photograph and the fake photograph. And she called it a fake and he got flustered with her. But she lays it out and explains it to him in a way that makes him rethink his actions and what he's going to do next. And it always, or at least these 2 times, it's turned around. He has pushed back against Deep Throat in both instances. And,
well, this scene here is a direct result maybe of Scully challenging Mulder, and then maybe his eyes are open to the point where he can now challenge Deep Throat. He's like, well, what have you given me? You're not telling me anything here. And I like how he calls him out on it, naming it as this Obi-Wan Kenobi crap, just get to the end.
Enough of Yeah, it's good stuff.
I mean, later on, if there's a weak spot in this, it is perhaps the motives of Deep Throat in how he pulls the agents into this and why particularly, but it's not as bad as other episodes where there really are some tenuous motivations here. In this case, I think you can see pretty much why. And he even explains it a little better later on. So
yeah,
I'll save that for later on. So he leaves, but not before imploring Mulder not to give up on this one, and clearly he does not. We cut back to Dr. Berrube's lab, where Crew Cut Man pays a visit. Berube tells him he doesn't know anything, but we get our first tasty clue. Crew Cut Man wants to know if Dr. Sakare is still alive, if he's contacted Berube. But Berube sticks to his guns, and unfortunately, Crew Cut Man ends the scene with violence, as the monkeys are the only witnesses to his death. Dun dun.
Those poor animals are traumatized.
They were having a love for life to begin with, it looks like.
Yeah, and those cages. Bastards. I would have done that to Dr. Berube.
Back in Arliss, Maryland, Chief Laciero calls off the divers as they haven't found anything. The boats come in with the divers, and as they depart, they don't notice the head of a man rising from the water. This is Dr. Sakare, our sweater-wearing man. And it's actually a really convincing crossfade from the location to what is actually a tank of water. Because apparently Simon Webb, who's the actor who plays Dr. Sakare, has a big phobia of water. So can you imagine?
Can imagine. I would be him. I'd be like, no.
So he had, apparently he had quite the time to do this. He didn't, and the crew didn't know he had this phobia, but I'm sure that, he was just being just stiff upper lip kind of guy. Cause like he's got the scene in advance. He knows what's called for, but
you got to do what you got to do to make that money.
You do that big extra money.
We'll give you $500 if you jump off this pier right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after the commercial, we get some flash cuts, photographs of the body of Dr. Berube dead on the ground. Scully reads from a file. It's been labeled as a suicide, given that Berube leapt from the window with one end of a row of medical gauze tied around his neck and the other tied to a gas outlet. Mulder is skeptical, noting that Berube kept the place immaculately clean, but the place has been totally turned over and crashed. Even Scully admits that the gauze is troubling. It all looks very contrived. Scully reveals some more details on Dr. Berube. He was working on the Human Genome Project, which isn't suspicious of itself, but then he's the only one who, in Mulder's words, went bungee jumping with medical gauze wrapped around his neck. We have a cut to our smoking gun, though the agents don't know yet. It's an Erlenmeyer Flask filled with a brownish red liquid with a label on the bottom that reads Purity Control. Mulder asks Scully to find out what the substance is, but she warns him if it's monkey pee, he is on his own.
I'm done with this if I'm dealing with monkey pee.
Came back, it's monkey pee. Meanwhile, Mulder is going to find out what he can about Dr. Berube. We have him going to search Berube's house, sneaking in through a back window. Meanwhile, at Georgetown University's microbiology department, Scully talks with a lab technician, Dr. Carpenter, about the sample. Computers saved the day again. What looks to be something like an electron microscope is showing us something that looks like a bacteria. It's fascinating to Carpenter, as it looks like bacteria, but no bacteria she's ever seen. She's going to do a freeze fracture, which is going to take some time. 90s, did you have any objections to this?
No, I think it's informative. It's 90s science talk, or as Star Trek calls it, technobabble.
Yeah.
For the layman, it works. I don't think it's anything that's off-putting to just a regular viewer. And I think that the scientist immediately recognizing it as something she's never seen, it kind of ups the stakes just a little bit, just a notch before the scene ends. I think it's cool.
Yeah. Yep. I think they have had worse sins in terms of playing fast and loose with the science element of the show. Mm-hmm. I certainly am no scientist. I can't invalidate what they're talking about, but the presentation is very much like, we need the plot to tell us exactly what this is right now, as opposed to, you'll get your results in 4 to 6 weeks, you know?
Yeah, it's a cool image. I like it.
Yeah. It is great, cheap CGI. Well, let's go back to low tech. We've got Mulder searching Berube's house. He discovers a telephone bill, which reveals multiple calls all placed to the same number, and he calls Danny to run the number. Mulder finds some keys in the same office, and we see through the window behind him, a white van pulls up. The phone rings, and Mulder assumes it's Danny with the information, but in fact, it's Dr. Zakari, calling from a payphone and looking like a wet cat. Mulder apparently sounds enough like Dr. Berube, so, Zakari tells him that he's been shot in the water for 3 days. Meanwhile, the crew cut man has been listening in on the conversation with a parabolic microphone, and I really love the treatment they give what he's hearing. It's got that sound to it to make it sound like, this is some electronic eavesdropping going on. It's pretty cool. Apparently, they handcrafted that prop, too. You just can't buy that off the shelf.
I wouldn't imagine so.
Spyware are us. Before Zakari can tell Mulder where he is, he passes out, and a passing Good Samaritan tells Mulder that the guy is hurt and needs medical attention. Mulder's luck runs out as the Samaritan says he's going to call an ambulance and hangs up. Danny does call back. We actually hear his voice. And he tells Mulder that the number belongs to a place called Zeus Storage at 1616 Pandora. And Mulder notes the white van driving away. So, couple of things. Do we ever hear Danny's voice again, or is this a one-off?
I don't want to commit to any answer, but I don't think so. I
don't think so either.
I'm pretty positive at this point we have not heard it, and I don't think we will again.
That is my feeling, too. Like, when I heard it, I was like, oh, he's got a voice? What? Is he going to be a recurring character now? But I don't ever recall Danny having a voice. It's just this castaway.
Yeah, it's just, we're going to, hey, Danny, I need this. And then the scene ends or something.
Yep. Yeah, he's your go-to boy. The other thing is Zeus Storage is actually a place, and it is actually at 1616 Pandora.
Really?
Like, they had another address, and they were scouting locations, and they came up with this one, and they're like, oh, okay, where do we got to go? Oh, 1616 Pandora. And they're like, that's perfect.
That's awesome.
Let's use that address. And so they saved themselves making a sign, I guess. Yeah.
Nice little advertisement.
Yeah, low storage rates. Go now. I didn't Google it to see whether it's still, whether it's still there.
You're not going to give us their deal of the month, Andrew?
Listen, this was a big episode, so I didn't want to waste it with frivolous side talk and jokes. We
buy
take
one unit, get another half off.
We take this stuff seriously, sir.
All right.
Meanwhile, Dr. Zakari has been recovered by an ambulance. As the ambulance speeds along, we cut to inside where the paramedics are working on Zakari. One is wearing a headset, which appears to connect him with somebody who knows more than he does. I don't know whether this is a thing in the States. I don't think it's a thing in Canada. But anyway, he's apparently on the phone with a doctor, not just some ambulance paramedic. Not dissing any ambulance paramedics, but it sounds like he's going to do something serious. Something called a thoracotomy. That is really interesting that they actually
put that thought,
run that through the plot.
Yeah.
As opposed to just the paramedic decides they're going to do this. It's a really nice attention to detail.
Yeah, I would imagine that paramedics don't have just free reign to do whatever they want until they get to the hospital. So that makes sense to me. I don't know the rules, but
if it's a life and death kind of thing, like
I'm sure there's a guideline that's
the guy is bleeding out.
You can go to this level, but if you feel more action needs to be taken, you got to clear it with the attending or something. I don't. That's just my guess.
Well, it's an interesting note, and it makes the scene a little bit more interesting than just the, usual ambulance drama.
For sure.
The paramedic describes the wounds on Zakari, including the green liquid oozing from a wound on his chest. HQ wants him to perform the thoracotomy to release the pressure on his chest, basically punching a needle into his lung. So he does it, and as he does it, the sound of gas filling the ambulance is heard, and the medics start coughing their little lungs out. The ambulance swerves, and Sakari regains consciousness enough to fumble his way out of the ambulance, which has swerved to a stop. We now cut back to Scully at Georgetown, who calls Mulder. Mulder reveals that the fugitive is still alive, and Scully reveals that the sample is in fact a bacteria, but it contains a virus, and it appears that Berube may have been cloning them. They also contain plant cells, and of course, Dr. Carpenter has never seen anything like it. We learn that the only reason to clone a virus inside a bacteria is to inject it into something living. And while gene therapy is a term we're familiar with now, even if it's not exactly commonplace medical procedure, in 94, it would have been almost science fiction.
Unheard of.
And Scully properly calls it highly experimental.
It's a look into the past about like how different this procedure is. I like it. It's good.
It's
stuff.
amazing, yeah. There are a lot of nuggets in this episode that have been drawn from the headlines of the day. And that's obviously one thing. They touched on the Genome Project, which had been it had been under in work for a long time. It hadn't just been like in 1994 they got going on it. Now, it had been going for a number of years, but maybe it hadn't been topical. But this aspect of gene therapy is definitely science fiction at the time. Scully goes on to mention that bacteria like this aren't around much anymore. Rather, they haven't existed for millions of years. And Mulder is just pulling up at Zeus storage, and rather than telling Scully this, he just tells her to keep up the good work.
Keep up the good work.
And she's sitting there telling him, like, there's something potentially extraterrestrial here. And he's like, yeah, that's great, Scully. I've got a storage locker to look at.
Everything he's ever wanted to hear. I've only been waiting 24 episodes to hear you talk dirty to me. I do want to note this scene when Mulder enters the building. They do their really nice dolly shot. And he's looking at the keys and it zooms in on him. It's like it adds like this unsettling nature to it. I really like that.
Got it in my notes.
I like that effect.
It's a zoom pull. The thing that I find a bit weird is that they use it here as opposed to when he goes into the room with all the tanks. It's
a fairly mundane scene. And it's like, but it's good. Like, I think it works better here than if they did use it in the room with all the tanks. I don't know why, but I think like it's like hinting at what's coming, kind of. Like he's entered this mysterious building and there's something here. But yeah, the dolly pull is really cool.
Yep, like it. As if you were explaining where I was going next, he has indeed entered the storage facility. We get the dolly pull, which is amazing.
Positive marks by everyone.
Yeah, everyone agreed that it was great, and the episode ended here. Mulder uses another key to enter the lab proper, where he is amazed to find row upon row of liquid-filled tanks, each of which contains what appears to be a human. They are wired up, or at least connected to computers, and the humans are monitored with equipment, and the movement of one reveals to us that they are all very much alive and breathing underwater. Pretty cool scene.
This is unsettling.
So, fun fact. These are all divers. They are not dummies, and they had breathing tubes that they would take a breath from in between takes.
Yeah. I mean, I could do this. I feel like I could do this. It's shallow enough for me not to lose my mind if I'm running out of breath.
Easier than making dummies.
Yeah.
And there are some of them where the water isn't like filled the tank. Like you could just lift up your head if you were about to lose it. There's a note in the background for this ep that says that apparently while this was shot, a lot of the female staff came by the set more often.
They're objectifying the men?
Apparently. I didn't want to make any assumption.
Well, they're getting theirs.
They must be. Well, we cut to commercial. When we return, Dr. Carpenter is showing some results of her DNA sequencing test to Scully. We get a biology lesson on DNA from Dr. Carpenter. And it's good. It catches the audience up in case you didn't pay attention during a biology class. So the shocking results here are that these bacteria have gaps in their DNA sequences, and there is a new DNA base pair. Normally there are 4. This one has 5. That, by definition, does not exist in nature. By definition, it is extraterrestrial, which probably sent shivers down Scully's spine because she's not the one who usually gets this kind of information.
I think this is where Scully's eyes cross and she starts drooling. Like, not someone else. No. She just has a conniption.
Yeah.
Can't take it.
Yeah. Maybe I'm going to go back to private practice. This is ridiculous. Yeah. So we cut back to Mulder, who is leaving Zeus storage as a white van pulls up. A couple of men with suits get out of the van and start tailing Mulder. A foot chase ensues, and Mulder gets away. And apparently, David Duchovny is a very fast runner.
This is a natural ability of David.
Apparently, when they first shot this, they used a golf cart. So they stuck a camera on the back of a golf cart, and it drives away, and he has to chase after it. But he caught up to it every time. So they had to swap it out for a pickup truck. And then they could actually drive fast enough to get away from him, or at least keep up.
It's awesome.
And it makes sense, right? Because like if he just slowed down, it would look like he was jogging. Or if he acted like he wasn't running fast enough, it wouldn't look right. So anyway, I think that's a really neat
Yeah,
thing.
the authenticity of the scene would kind of go down the drain if he's like, all right, I caught up. I got to slow it down.
He's definitely committed. Well, that's what we're here for, educating the people about David Duchovny and his natural abilities. This is the David Duchovny Podcast.
And in just a few episodes, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get to see him in a red Speedo.
That's right. Back at Mulder's apartment, Scully is calling. She reveals that the bacteria doesn't exist in nature. It's extraterrestrial. She's not at all freaked out about this at all, not one little bit.
I believe you.
Mulder is almost nonplussed about that. He's like, yeah, I knew. He wants to show her the contents of Zeus storage. And the next day, they pull up outside of the storage facility, and Scully takes a moment to apologize to Mulder, which is, I think, a really interesting turn.
Here we are. You know, she's got that moment of crisis that she's slept on it. She's like, God damn it, I think Mulder's right. And as much as I don't want him to be, he is.
Yeah. I think it's more than that, though. I think that she says it in the dialogue. She says, you know, if you'd listened to me, we wouldn't be here right now. I know that I should trust your instincts is essentially what she's saying. And I think it's a pretty brave choice to say it.
It's great. It shows her vulnerability. It shows the audience once again that these are people. And it's part of what makes them awesome to watch is that her more than him, but they're not afraid to admit they're wrong. You know, they can grow from these things. And I think this show does a great job. And this is one of those moments that allows Scully to grow and open her mind a little bit to accept what she's seen. Mm-hmm. As hard as it is for her. And that's kind of what's still cool about it. It's like she's still struggling with it for the rest of the show, you know, but, you know, it's things like this that make her a little more willing to believe.
Mulder's pushed past it. He wants her to see these amazing fish people. But unfortunately, when they go inside, the place has been cleaned out. Mulder tells her that there were 5 bodies suspended in water, computers monitoring them, but clearly alive underwater. And as Scully asks what happened to them, we have the dramatic reveal of Deep Throat entering.
God only knows. Most likely they've been destroyed. Scully, we met ever so briefly.
Destroyed by whom?
I don't know.
I don't believe you.
There are limits to my knowledge, Mr. Mulder. Inside the intelligence community, there are so-called black organizations, groups within groups conducting covert activities unknown at the highest levels of power.
There were 3 men last night. I was chased.
If you were chased, you would have been killed. Those men are trained for that sort of business, and they are trained well.
Were those the same men who killed Dr. Berube?
Presumably.
Why?
Why? Good Lord. You work so hard and you still don't see it.
Dr. Berube was conducting human experiments with extraterrestrial viruses.
Yes, but that's been going on for years. We've had the tissue since 1947, but not the technology.
Roswell?
Roswell was a smokescreen. We've had a half a dozen better salvage operations. Dr. Berube was killed because his work was too successful. You're standing in the room where the first DNA transplant took, the first human-alien hybrid was created. 6 volunteer patients, all terminally ill. And one, Dr. William Sakar, an old friend of Dr. Baruba's, was dying of melanoma cancer. And as a result of the ET gene therapy, all 6 patients treated in this room began to recover from their illnesses. Dr. Sakar was able to live a more or less normal life. As normal as possible for a man who has developed inhuman strength and the ability to breathe underwater.
That's how he was able to elude capture.
What was he running from?
Dr. Sakar is never supposed to have survived. Dr. Baruba's research was part of a top-secret government project being run out of Los Alamos. All they were interested in was the technology, the science. To have a hybrid living out in the real world, a greater liability. I mean, what if he should need an emergency medical procedure? The man has a blood chemistry that is alien and very likely toxic. That story should hit the press.
It was just easier to kill Dr. Sakar.
Of course. There's only one problem. He was Dr. Baruba's old friend. He was able to warn him.
There's just one thing I don't understand. Why you gave us so little to go on in the beginning, and why are you giving us so much now?
I didn't anticipate the speed and precision of that cleanup operation. They're systematically destroying all the evidence. Dr. Baruba, the body's here. Without the evidence, you two have no case. Who would believe the story I just told you? You must put together everything that you have found, and you must find Dr. Sakar before they do. I'll have no further contact with you on this matter.
Discuss. What do you think of Deep Throat's involvement at this point?
I think part of his method with contacting Mulder and putting Mulder onto these cases is a combination of him really, really wanting to let him know what's going on, but he also knows the risk in that. Whatever the risk he decides is changes every day. You know, it's at one point it's, you know, the population isn't ready. Another episode, he's getting too close. He can't know everything for whatever reason he decides to put forward. He knows he can't just outright tell him everything because it's his ass on the line and he'll be killed for anything he tells him. I think Deep Throat overall is a good guy at this point, and he's trying to show Mulder the answers without giving him all the answers. In this particular case, the cleanup crew was a little bit quicker and more thorough than he expected. So now he's dropping the information Mulder should have gotten over time, and it's all kind of crumbling underneath Deep Throat's feet. There's a little bit of a panic in this scene, I think. And as we see throughout the rest of the episode, things start to fall apart pretty quickly. And I don't even think he's prepared for that. So I think his interest in Mulder and his care for Mulder is getting the better of Deep Throat at this point. And it's going to come to a head.
Well, I accept a bunch of things about that. The first being that the bad guys are not infallible. That is something that I appreciate the writers doing in this show. Is it's just, you know, everybody is not perfect, and the bad guys are not an exception here. They could have destroyed the 5 volunteers other than Dr. Sakari, you know, well before this. You know, Mulder could have arrived at Zeus storage and found it to be empty and been like, oh, I guess there's nothing here. But, you know, makes for a better episode that he did get there and just happened to get there a little bit ahead of the cleanup crew. So that's cool. I am not on board the same way you are with the idea that Deep Throat is a hero, I suppose, or at least a reliable ally. I think that he is very neutral on this. Like, if anything, he's only an ally in that he occasionally his interests aligned with Mulder's. That's always been my read on Deep Throat.
You and I differ there. I think maybe I just want to believe, no pun intended there, that he's the good guy. He's trying to be the guy he described himself as in EBE, atone for his sins.
Fair. Well, and we'll be able to debate that a bit more when we get to the big reveal later on. But yeah, they've now got a lot to go on. Scully's going to go to Georgetown to follow up with Dr. Carpenter's work, and Mulder is going to go find Dr. Sakari. He's going to trust his instincts. Back at Georgetown, Scully can't find Dr. Carpenter. She finds other scientists in a lounge, and she's told that there's been a horrible tragedy, that Dr. Carpenter and her whole family died in a car accident. She looks appropriately shocked. Meanwhile, Mulder returns to Dr. Berube's house and hears that there is somebody else in there. He draws his gun and investigates, locating the sounds in the attic. He creeps inside, calling out for Sakari, and after a short fight, Mulder tells Sakari that, "I'll protect you." But no sooner do we have this resolution that Dr. Sakari is shot, and we have a gas-masked crew-cut man in the entrance to the attic. Invisible gas fills the air, and Mulder succumbs painfully as we fade to commercial.
The reveal that that doctor's entire family was taken out, that's some heavy shit.
Yeah.
That's pretty intense.
It's offstage violence, right? So we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It would be great if there was a scene that sort of drew that thread out a little bit and we would know. I mean, I look at it like crew cut man paid a visit to the family station wagon and cut the brake line.
Yeah.
And assumed that she would be driving it. But in this case, it was the whole family that drove it. And boy, that's unfortunate. It could have been more, could have been a bit more deliberate. And yeah, that would certainly expose them as sadistic.
I think I've always viewed it as deliberate. Like, who could she have spoken to?
Right. Yeah, that could be.
It could be husband, boy. Just, I'm going to tell my husband what I just found because it's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
That's covering their bases.
What I find interesting about it is Deep Throat later on is he's going to drop an example to Scully of how vicious these people are. And when she is sort of hedging on giving him the parcel to trade for Mulder. And he's like, listen, in 82, they inoculated a whole bunch of kids to see what would happen. You don't know who you're dealing with here. She knows exactly who they're dealing with because she's just been told that a whole family associated with the doctor who knows this information has been viciously offed in a car accident. So it's unfortunate that this thread is kind of cast aside so casually to sort of paint the villains as appropriately evil.
But you know what? It does its job and we can move forward. And it's still effective. Great writing.
Yeah. Well, we cut back to Mulder's phone ringing, and Mulder is restrained with duct tape. Crew cut man tells Mulder, "Your phone's been ringing off the hook." And we got a nice little ominous interchange between them and a low-hanging threat that Mulder should spill his guts. Meanwhile, Scully visits Mulder's apartment, where she's met by Deep Throat. He tells her that Mulder's not home, and that at the same time he also knows that they won't kill him. He's too high profile. Scully has evidence that could expose them. Deep Throat tells her that they can hatch a plot to get her inside to the high containment facility in Fort Marlene, Maryland, where she can get the wellspring, the original tissue sample. With it, they can make a deal to save Mulder's life.
Things are ramping up.
So, I think that there is some high-level manipulation here because he starts off by saying they won't kill him. He's too high profile. And then he immediately pivots back around by the end of this conversation to say, well, we can get something to save his life. So
it is a weird choice of words for like a separation of two sentences.
Yeah. And they haven't been subtle up to now. So I don't know. You either look at it like it's clumsy writing and they needed the plot to pivot this way, or they intentionally wrote him this way and he is this manipulative person.
Well,
and I don't know which one to go with.
If you look at it for the rest of the show and up until this point, rule number one is we can't just kill Mulder because of a crusade and people know his name. And if he's suddenly off, too many questions will come up. That's what we're being told by Chris Carter at all times. So we have to just kind of sync with that and just sit with it. In this particular moment, for me, it's always just, they're not going to kill him, but at the same time, they're not going to let him go until we get what we need. So I can get you something to get you your partner back. Is it a little tenuous? Yes.
Yeah. Well, I like your read on it. Certainly the plot is about to get more interesting because they chose to go this way. We're going to have Dana Scully's heist, which is arguably one of the best parts of the episode. So, I mean, make what you will. I think that maybe it's, if anything, it's the clunkiest part of the episode in terms of how we get to this point. Like she couldn't have done it without Deep Throat for sure, because she's about to get all sorts of ID and stuff that's going to let her do this. But
she couldn't have done it without herself.
Well,
She guessed at that
she certainly
purity control. She wasn't positive on that one.
Yeah.
And she could have been shot in the face.
Yeah, but it makes sense in retrospect. Well, let's dig into that one then. We're going to transition to Scully's infiltration of Fort Marlene. She's now got a badge, which gives her clearance to the facility, and she casually marches her way into it with her cute leather briefcase. She uses her badge to take the elevator to the 7th floor, cryology. And she again uses her badge to enter the facility. She moves to another door. This time, her badge doesn't work. Rule of 3 is always good stuff. We have an oh shit moment along with her, and then there's a voice emanating from a speaker asking her name. We see a guard on the other side of a pane of security glass. She answers, gives her name, asks where she works for, and she says the federal government, which is a delightfully large institution.
Thank you for your vague answer.
Exactly. What's your name? Jane Smith.
I was also waiting for level 7 to be alien bodies.
Yeah, exactly. Secret shit. There's no sense of humor in this installation. It's too bad. Well, the guard asks for a project password, and we have a moment where she thinks the game is up. I like these cuts. She looks at an alarm bell, a camera, a dubious guard, and he gives her this project password. And then she answers purity control, which is enough to grant her access. So it's a really good save. You got to give her credit.
Oh, yeah. I like the scene. I get the tension. I love it. Everything you described. But I think if you want to go the reality route, if he was asking that question and the person on the other end sounded like they weren't sure, there may be some follow-up questions. But that's obviously tension. I'm sure
It was.
But yeah.
Interesting. I'm not what-ifing this one, but I certainly could. The room beyond that she goes into, like, she just goes to the locker marked purity control and does her thing. But, like, there are, like, 7 other lockers there. You got to imagine, like, now go to your own project. Don't go to anybody else's and muck about. Well, she goes to an area filled with tanks that have liquid nitrogen in them. This is the cryology lab, after all. And she finds the locker marked purity control, withdraws the canister, and pulls out the original tissue sample, which is revealed to be a small, frozen alien gray, complete with big head and big eyes. Mark Snow's strains of strings sing us through to this climactic moment.
It's a big moment.
It's a big reveal. I mean, she never gets to see this, right?
Think of it this way. Not only is it a big moment for the audience, but Scully gets to see it before Mulder.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I think that's great. She's getting this big reveal where Mulder would cream in his pants.
Yeah.
I just think that was clever. Very good writing. An interesting way to flip the show and keep it interesting,
Yeah.
Now she's seen everything and she's the skeptic still. It's interesting.
Well, far and beyond the idea that she is the one that is going to save Mulder.
Mm-hmm.
She is not the damsel in distress finally. Like, she is the one that is going to be doing the action sequence that is going to get the thing which is going to save Mulder. It is pretty great to have this little payback. Well, we fade to a bridge later at night where Scully is met by Deep Throat. He tells her that the bad guys are willing to make the exchange, and we have a confrontation. Scully does not trust him, as she doesn't know anything about him or his motives. And as if to underline how out of her depth she is, Deep Throat tells her a story about how in 1987, the bad guys gave a group of children an inoculation of the alien DNA just to see what would happen. Despite her doubts, she gives him the sample and retreats to her car as Deep Throat moves up to make the exchange. The white van, driven by Crew Cut Man, drives up to meet Deep Throat, and we have a very obvious moment where Crew Cut Man sees Scully, and Scully sees Crew Cut Man. The vehicles meet, each of them get out. Deep Throat hands Crew Cut Man the package, and Crew Cut Man retrieves a gun and shoots Deep Throat. Scully cries out, running up, Mulder is unceremoniously dropped out of the back of the white van, which drives off. Scully checks Mulder and, seeing that he's still alive, goes over to Deep Throat, who offers her last words, "Trust no one."
Awesome.
And that's Jerry Hardin, ladies and gentlemen. Although he does make 2 return appearances later on, doesn't he?
He does.
Well, I like it because it means that, and Carter has said this, he's been like, I wanted you to think that anybody was expendable. And obviously that's probably going to exclude David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, but it's like, you don't get attached to anybody because you never know what's going to happen with these characters. It's a dangerous world. So I like that he's crafting it that way.
The scene is just so tense. The buildup is here, the climax of everything. They get into an argument, and then he leaves with the package, and all we get is that really deep, subtle music as Scully's watching in her rearview mirror, and it's just like, we're waiting for something to happen, and it's like a bolt of lightning. You're just waiting for it, and then sure enough, he takes a bullet, and it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect it at the time. I mean, I guess what we were waiting for was the double cross, right? Mm-hmm. That Mulder wasn't going to be returned, but instead the double cross is that Deep Throat is shot. Technically, they didn't have to give him Mulder, but I suppose, he's too hot to handle, basically. They needed to dump him.
Well, they got something better. They can't kill Mulder, and they found a mole. So a pretty big mole, considering he's in tandem with CSM. Mm-hmm. Same level. And this guy was giving Mulder some information.
There's never a scene, is there, with any of the bad guys where they discuss why they had to kill the Deep Throat character. Definitely done behind closed doors, and interesting the decision to have done it.
Well, and that it just goes to show you again who you're dealing with. If they would rather shoot Deep Throat, this guy who's at the head of everything with the rest of the syndicate, instead of talk to him and debrief him and get their revenge on him by torture or something, they just kill him. You flipped, so you're gone. That's intense.
And and it's sending a message to Mulder and Scully too, in the most obvious way.
Doesn't get more serious than a bullet.
We fade back to Scully's apartment building. Our legend tells us this is Washington, D.C., 10 days later. She's in bed, but she wakes up when she sees the time is 11:22 and the phone rings. It's Mulder. Filled with emotion, Mulder tells her that they're shutting them down. They're reassigning Mulder and Scully to other sections. Word has come down from the top. Scully, clearly shocked, asks Mulder what he's going to do, and an emotional Mulder replies that he's not going to give up, not as long as the truth is out there. Typically poignant episode ending. I thought that was good. Well, we fade to our very last scene where we have the cigarette-smoking man walking through a space filled with narrow rows of shelves, each filled with cardboard boxes. It's the same space we saw earlier, where he hid the communications device taken from Billy Miles.
Pilot.
Walks over to a box marked Evidence 16604, holds up a jar that contains the alien fetus, and he puts it in the box, which contains many others just like it. He walks down the hallway, and he leaves the room, securing the door with a keycard. The camera pans over the sign on the door, which reveals to us that the storage location of these relics is none other than the Pentagon. Fade to black. End of episode. Mike, let us launch into final thoughts.
The episode, all in all, is fantastic. As you said at the beginning, it sets that flagpole of, okay, we have to do something. We have to commit to some story elements to project us into the next phase of the show, if you want to call it. And this is the beginning of that information, that the alien DNA and seeing alien human hybrids for the first time, that is going to become a major thing in the show. And it started here, pretty much. So the way they went out of the first season is so powerful because, again, we lost such a great character, a big character. Even though he's only in a handful of episodes, he's very important to the story, and he will continue to be throughout the rest of the show.
Absolutely.
He is the blueprint of all the people in all the seasons following that Mulder and Scully have to deal with, that are on the inside, and it's just so great to see him in action. And unfortunately, we have to see him die, but it only makes the episode that much better because he is, at the end of the day, expendable. And it's a terrifying moment when you see characters like that taken out just kind of on a whim. One bullet, not very ceremoniously. They kill him and drive away, and it leaves our agents injured, and they close down the X-Files. And it's just a great way to end the show, or the season, and everything spycraft in this episode works so well. Again, the doctor's whole family being killed. This episode, more than anything, gives us a look into just how serious the situation is and what they will do to protect it.
Yep, I would buy that. For me, I mean, as you said, I don't think it's a surprise where I am. It's such a great episode. And listen, the world agrees with us. I mean, in 94, 16% of all TV watchers were watching this episode live in May. IMDb gives it 9.1 out of 10. I mean, it's one of the highest ranking shows of the show, that has ever been written. So like it's solid. It holds up really well. Like even rewatching it now, it stands up. It doesn't lean too hard on the technology of the time. There's some bits, but I mean, you can forgive all of it really. It's classic.
I get lost in it, obviously. I don't, when I watch the show, I don't get bogged down by anything. Like I don't even think about the technology gaps or it's just that good. The writing is that tight that everything else fades into the background.
As you say, the culmination of many brewing plot threads, an exciting exit of one of our iconic characters. And I mean, it works because we care about this character. Like they have laid the groundwork for him over so many episodes, and you don't necessarily trust him, but clearly you like him because Mulder relies on him. And that double shot of taking him out and then taking out Mulder's reason for being, it's the great pivot into season 2. We've talked about the pivot into season 5. That was the big thing that kind of reinvented the series. I think they needed to do that consistently. And so this is the one from season 1 to 2, the removal of the X-Files and hitting them very low. So it is a really great way to end it. It's like the end of Empire Strikes Back. It doesn't end on a high note. It ends on a low note, but it's why it works really.
Yeah.
It's kind of a roller coaster and a thinker of an episode at the same time. And there's precious little what ifing, because they actually cover their bases really well. And where it does come up, even the characters cover it, right? They're like, why Deep Throat? Why are you giving all this information to us? It's like, I was right there with them going, yes. Why are you doing this now as opposed to earlier? And, he explains it. So it's thoughtful, they saw us coming, and I appreciate that. So yeah, for me, it's definitely up there as one of my favorites. Really, really amazing. We can end the podcast now, right? Like there's nothing else to say about this show.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to us swirl about this fine brew of a concoction in our little Erlenmeyer Flask of review.
Sounded like a swirl of different ingredients to come up with a pun, Andrew.
That's all I got for punology on this one. Thank you for listening, and until next time, I am Andrew, and that is Mike. Say good night.
Good night. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, please rate and review on your podcast app of choice. Andrew and I would be eternally grateful to you fine people for helping us expand and get the word out. Also, we've got a killer group on Facebook. Feel free to join in on the discussion at facebook.com/groups/thisisnothappeningpod and become an official member of the Syndicate. We do polls and we have questions for every episode to give you guys the opportunity to chime in and possibly let your voice be heard on our recordings. And please join us on our new Twitter at tinhxfilepod, no dash, to stay up to date on everything, moment to moment. Thank you, and remember, don't stop swimming. It's that time, everyone, the Magus Media Production sales pitch. Please check out our homepage at magusmediaproductions.net so you can stay up to date on all of our shows. Check out our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/magusmediaproductions, both of which have our Discord link on it, where you can join us for live shows as we record them for future release. At Magus Media Prods on X, our Patreon, patreon.com/magusmedia, where a $5 donation will help us keep the lights on and bringing you new content, and you get some stickers. Thank you for your consideration and support.